to that, do you guys have any idea about SAS? Like what is SAS all about? Why it is specifically required? Why in the clinical domain SAS is very widely used? Any basic understanding? If so, you can just track to yourself and just give some understanding about it. Anyone would like to speak? No idea? Okay. So let me start with, so SAS stands for Statistical Analysis System. Maybe you might have heard about different terms relevant to the SAS like SaaS, SAP, but all these are the completely different. SAP is something relevant to the ERP kind of a system. SaaS, which is also referred as a SaaS, but still this is like a cloud-based services, like software as a service we call. So this is what we are not going to learn. So we are going to learn as a SAS, which is referred as a statistical analysis system. In spite, it is referred to be as a software. I mean, generally we call it as a software, but here when SAS refers it as a system, what is the difference in between these two? The very first thing is, whenever we refer to this term called as a software, some or the other ways it's a limited thing. Limited in the sense, generally organizations who wanted to perform any kind of a task, probably they need a software which can do a certain kind of a task. Again, if they wanted to perform any other kind of a task, again, they would be requiring one other application or one other software for this. So if in an organization, if they wanted to perform n number of tasks, they would be requiring n number of softwares because everything is independent of each other. And probably the task which is required is done by only one software. And obviously the integration in between them and communication in between them, the performance, everything will be really very difficult to maintain and manage. So what happens, these organizations who wanted to work with certain tasks may not be able to work with one system or one particular software. They need an hundred of softwares for that. So in order to overcome that, we need some kind of a system which can perform all the end-to-end tasks in it. End-to-end in the sense, everything required by the organization. Now, let's first understand what is the difference in between these two terms, that is a limitation as well as an end-to-end. Let's take a very small example for this. What is it? First, I'll talk about the limitations. So most of you are very much familiar, I think, for Excel. Maybe most of you might be using it or at least familiar about it. So if we talk about all the features of an Excel, what all it can do, it is generally used for storing some kind of a data. I can refer it as storing some data, right? And as the data is stored, we can use it for some manipulations. Manipulation is nothing but making some changes to the data, updations, deletions. We are trying to manage them. As the data is given clearly, we can also apply some kind of a formulas in them. As we have some kind of a data which can be properly seen, which can also be used for creating some kind of a reports. Even we have a capability of creating some kind of an visualizations like graphs and all we can create it. Pivot tables, lot and lot. So there are many capabilities these Excel has. Now, more or less, we are able to do the similar type of a task even in the SAS as well. They're very much similar. Then why not these organizations are completely depending upon like an Excel? Why should they need a SAS like softwares? Now it comes into the limitations out of it. So as I said, the data that we store in an Excel is like how much? It's limited. How much it is? We can say approximately of 1 million records we would like to, or we can store in it, the maximum. Even if there is a new update or new version coming up, even it can store little more, but not too much. Now, in the present generation, like how much of a data is getting generated, everyone knows it. Because the simple example we take it. Let's say you're into the banking. Everyone has got the internet banking, mobile banking, digital payments. So when the day start, each and every individual person is trying to create, do a lot of transactions, transferring it, withdrawing it, transferring, paying for something. Every data is recorded. So you can understand as in each individual, how much of a data would be generated. If I have to store into that, like 1 million records is going to be Very, very less, is it? We cannot depend upon multiple Excel sheets. We cannot depend upon the integration. It should be quick and faster. So that's a major limitation. The other limitation could be like a security. So what is a security? This is an independent file. If it is shared to someone, obviously all the confidential data will also be seen by someone else. So we cannot have a proper security. It do not have any capability of centralization. What do you mean by centralization? Any updations made on these files are not reflected to anyone else because it is an independent file. It do not have any capabilities of DBMS and so on. Maybe you might not be aware of DBMS. We'll discuss all that going forward. But there are certain set of limitations right now. Now, even in the clinical, what do you mean by clinical? You're trying to develop some kind of a drug. Obviously, it has to go through a lot of phases where each and every phase will have to record all the subjects' data for all the data that is collected and the drug is given. A lot of data would be getting generated. So if you have a software like an Excel, obviously it's not sufficient. Now we need something else which can be able to store all the data into that. So what it is introduced with, it has been introduced with something called as an databases. Maybe you might be familiar or heard about this very often. For implementing this databases, we need some softwares like an Oracle, Microsoft, like we have a software called the Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, so on. Lot and lot of softwares are available. But what is the importance of this software is just to store the data. It can only store the data, but it will not be able to do anything. We can simply say it as it is used for data manipulations or a data management. I'll write it like this. It's just a data management tool. Okay. So here, if I'm trying to store the data, how much of a data can I store? It's not in 1 million, 2 million, 10 million. It's now into the sizes. Size in the sense, maybe I can store up to some 1,000 terabytes. Maybe some other databases have a capability of storing even more, 10,000 terabyte, 20,000 terabyte, or so on. It depends on the capability of the database. Now it's fine. I can store a huge data, but these softwares do not have any capability to perform formulas on it. Maybe I want to create some reports. We will not be able to do so. It will not be able to create any graphical representations, nothing apart from the data manipulations. That's it. Now the problem is not solved. One set of a problem is solved for storing a huge data, but certainly the rest of the other, it is not. But probably when we say, like, I wanted to analyze some data for the last 10 years, last 15 years, not only from a country like in India, UK, US, Australia, many other countries' data, I'm trying to gather it. Now, where should I keep all that? Even this particular storage may be very, very lesser in that particular scenario. So now we need something else which can handle this much of a huge data. So then they have introduced with one other subject line called as a data warehouse. You might have heard about it. What do you mean by data warehouse? It's an unlimited storage of a data. Unlimited in the terms like any specific limitation of terabytes and all? No. It can store terabytes, petabytes, zetas, zota, whatever the size of the data, it can store. Not only that, it can store all the data, even the data is coming from some kind of a notepad kind of thing, like a text files we generally refer. We can also store the data coming from like Excel. Okay, we can also store the data coming from some kind of a database. A lot of things that we can do. Everything is accepted on the data warehousing. Okay. Fine. So now we need some kind of an implementation software for this. Like as you've seen, the Microsoft is like a Excel provided by Microsoft. For the databases, like we have an Oracle, SQL Server and all. But for the data warehouses, how can we implement this? This is implemented by using one of the most prominent tool like SAS. Right. So SAS is an implementation tool which is used for like implementing the different subject lines of not only the data warehousing, it can also implement business intelligence, artificial intelligence, many other. Now you have a question, are we learning all that? No, we are learning as per the requirement that we do on our clinical trials, which is done on the like a drug development process, we will be doing that. Begins by do know about SAS is an implementation tool for the data warehousing and many other subject lines. Okay. I hope it is all clear so far, everyone, guys, understanding it?
Yes, clear.
Yeah, okay. All others, it is good. Can I go ahead with the next?
Yes, clear.
Yeah, okay. So now, what is the importance of the statistics? Any idea? Anyone here from the stats background? What is the need of statistics? Any quick understanding? Why do we need it? What is the importance of that? No idea? Yeah, okay. So I'll go with a very generic example once again. We are all like a customers of a bank, is it? And every day you might be receiving a call saying that you are given with some free kind of pre-approved loans, pre-approved credit cards. You have been given this offer, that offer, and all. Is it? So this is what every day we do it, or every day we get some kind of a calls. So how are they are trying to understand whether we are a potential customer, whether really we are good to get some kind of an offers, how they're able to take a decision? Any idea? Let's say there are a lot of people right here in this session today, right? So how are they going to take a decision whether these guys are right or these guys, I mean, this particular customer is good, this customer is not really good, how to give an offer, how much of an offer have to be provided? How do they understand all this? Obviously, by analyzing the data. So how do they analyze? Let's say if you're like they are getting your transaction data, maybe in the transactions they're able to see the transaction amount you're trying to do it. Maybe these are some kind of an individual values, right? So if they look into these values, how do they understand that you are really a very good customer? How do they take a decision if your money, I mean, your account is having a good amount of money? How can take a decision that you're really a good customer and then or a defaulter? Probably by looking into the each and every individual value, the decision making is quite really very difficult, right? So what we need to do, we need to understand the data. So then we require certain set of statistical measures. What is it? If you remember, in a schooling, maybe you might have learned or heard about this mean, median, mode, standard deviation, and all, right? So what is all this status like in these measures are used for? So what do you mean by mean? Mean is nothing but an average. Okay. So you can understand a particular values, like it has a formula that is sum of all the values by the total. And if you're able to calculate on a small number, it is very easy. Let's say you have 10 values, you're able to calculate and get some kind of a value where the decision can be made very easier. But what if your data is really huge, right? So let's say you wanted to know the average, what is the average balance of that particular customer, or what is the average income, average expenditure, average investments, so that the decision can be made whether they are right customers or any kind of a default or something. Is it? So the decision can be made based on a lot of statistical measures. Mean is nothing but an average. Median is a midpoint value. Mode is the number of occurrences. All that they will be doing, right? Now the point here is, if we have to get these kind of a statistical measures, doing it on the smaller number is easier. Even we can depend upon some smaller softwares like an Excel and all. Okay. So when we do it on a smaller number, obviously it is a time taking manually. So depending on the software is okay. But to some extent, if the data is getting increased, what happens? The day by day, the data will keep on increasing, but these softwares will not be able to handle all them. And we also discussed that like a database can store a huge data, but we do not have any capabilities of performing some formats. Now, we need something in which we wanted to store all the data, understand it, develop it, manage it, manipulate it, and also perform all this in order to make some kind of a decision. So our software should be capable of doing all that. So now, in order to understand this, statistics is really helpful. Simple to say, it's generally defined as a study of data is nothing but your statistics. Now, when I say it's a study of data, who will provide us? From where the data would be coming up? So the data would be coming from various sources. For example, if it is in the clinical, we get it from the surveys, we get it from the sites, hospitals. Maybe we can also get some kind of a data from other demographic places and all. So what is the first thing we can do is we should be collecting all the data, and the data coming across maybe in the different types of an like formats electronically. Maybe it is like in text files, Excel sheets, or database. Your software should be capable of doing all that, right? So the first thing we will be doing is the data collection. Once this data is collected, we are going to organize them. Organizing, or we can say grouping or clustering or something. What do I mean by this? Here we have a lot of data in front of you. We are trying to organize as per the study. For example, in the clinical oncology study, like let's say COVID study, or let's say I wanted to perform a specific age group or a demographic, we're trying to organize them. And once this organizing is done, we go for some kind of an analysis. Okay. So analysis specifically done with the help of the different types of statistical measures, like descriptive stats or inferential stats and so on. Various statistical measures we will be performing upon it. And later we get to do that interpretation of this. Interpretation is nothing but making a decision. How do you make a decision? Based on the type of regulatories which have given some kind of an set of protocols, we'll be following it. For example, it's a clinical, we have an FDA. And for example, we have like in the banking, we have an RBI and all. And later we will be going with the reporting. So the reporting is done in different ways. Like we can say the data representation as well as like an visualizations. So our software should be capable of doing all of that, right? We need such softwares which can be capable of doing all this. Now, in this particular scenario, we will also be required to have the reports created and shared it to someone, maybe our customer, client, or for the submissions to the FDA, we require it to be presented. We generally call it as a presentation. So what is it? We are trying to do all this using the SAS software, is it? So we cannot expect someone to have the SAS software with them in order to see all these representations and everything. Maybe our client or customer would ask us the output in an on the go on any kind of a device kind of a thing, mobility. So our software should be capable of generating any PDF representations or HTML output or even a document or whatever they're requesting for. So our software should be capable of doing all this. Now, if you observe, right from the data collection to the presentation, everything is done under the SAS itself. So we should generally refer it as an end-to-end. This end-to-end process is required by most of all the organizations, specifically in the clinical aspect. Okay. Even if you consider anything, even in the financial sector, the banking domain, or it's in the FMCG, anywhere where there is an analysis which have to be performed, all this process is quite really very common. Now, you can understand a lot of softwares may be involved if we are not using a SAS. So SAS is something which can very efficiently handle this with a higher performance. And specifically in the clinical, this is the only approved by FDA. This is the only software approved by FDA. So every clinical organizations, or we can say the pharma companies, would be working on the SAS, right? Now, this is an understanding what we will be required to do using the SAS in the clinical. Okay, these are all the phases we will be learning. Is it clear so far? After this, what is the need of SAS? What we will be doing it? Why it is required in the clinical domain? Guys, is it clear? Any questions? If so, please let me know so that I'll go into the next few more points. Correct. So now these are all the different phases which are required, and we will be learning all this. So how do we learn it? This will be done with the help of a software called as an base SAS. The name of the software itself is a base SAS that we will be learning, covering all the phases we have a programming. That we will be learning first. And once this is done, there is another capabilities it has. We call it as an advanced SAS. So here it has some other third party capabilities also. I don't say it's a third party, but it has an additional capabilities beyond to the existing one. Like we'll be working with certain part of an SQL. SQL is other language, but still we'll be able to use it within the SAS. We can also have some kind of a macros, like it's generally referred as a reusability. Rather than writing a huge codes, we can minimize that with the capability of this. So that's the reason they generally call it as an advanced SAS. And once we are very much familiar working with the base and advanced, then we will be learning with the clinical. So SAS and clinical SAS, everything is same. But for the people who are coming from the clinical, we are supposed to learn certain set of protocols which have been given by some kind of a regulatory. We call it as a CDISC, Clinical Data Interchange Standard Consortium. So they have directed some kind of a global protocols which have to be followed across everyone in order to standardize the data. So now using the SAS, we will be implementing all the protocols like SDTM, ADAM, and call it as a tables and listings, TLF. All this we will be doing it. So that's the reason we call it as a clinical SAS. Apart from that, SAS is same for everyone. So on this, we will be learning one after the other. It's a sequence, right? So once the base SAS and advanced is completed, then we can go with the clinical. So you should be able to do the programming by then. You have to implement everything, all the clinical protocols using the SAS programming. So for that reason, we will be working with all these as a sequence, right? So in this course, we'll be first learning with the base, advanced, and then the clinical will be coming. Now, before you ask a question, normally a lot of questions asked by many of them. I'll put it to you. After that, you may start your questions. The very first thing is, we come from a science background. Can we learn the programming? Is it easier? Yes, there are a lot of people. I mean, most of my participants are coming from the science background, even from the different other backgrounds. They were able to do the coding very easily. Compared with any other programming, the SAS programming is very easiest and simplest, provided you should be practicing it. Okay. So whatever we will be learning it I'll be specifically introducing with the concept first, the implementation of it, and you'll be asked to do some assignments and activities to learn or reproduce very well whatever you have learned. So that way we'll learn every scenario, every syntax, every kind of an statements or the case studies we do, and every way we will be learning it in each and every concept. Okay. So that's the reason once you start practicing it, you'll find it very easy to write it. Going forward, the complexity will get increased. Meanwhile, once after you have a best practice, you'll be able to do it. And I'll also be providing with a lot of scenarios on the go and a lot of syntaxes which you have to write by yourself and try by yourself. You can come across with a lot of question and answers, the interactive way to discuss all of them. So it will be very much easier for you to learn. So being a science background, we do not have any kind of a dependencies that if you know something, only then you'll be able to learn SAS. It is nothing like that. So SAS is an independent. We do not have any kind of a prerequisites for this. So that's the first thing. After that, like how can we learn? How do we know all this? So anyways, as I said, I'll be providing you all the required materials to this, the examples, syntaxes, practice, I'll be giving it to you. So all that you can understand. Meanwhile, before we start a session, I'll also make it to know about all the basic fundamentals. Maybe right now, whatever I've listed is quite really generic, but just to be in one single page, everyone, I would like to give some kind of an introduction to all the basic fundamentals. We'll discuss on that and all the keywords and jargons will be introduced to you so that you'll find it very comfortable working on them. And we'll go initially very keenly and slowly so that everyone is in touch with the software, how to work with it, what is the interface of it, how to write a program, everything will be discussed. So that everyone will start writing by yourself and you'll be much more comfortable in writing all the programming. So this is how the learning will be doing it. Once the base SAS is completed, base SAS is the major portion. And after that, the advanced SAS, we will be doing it. And after that, we'll be doing the clinical. So we will be learning, covering the maxima, but whatever is required really for the industry, that we will be learning it rather than putting all of them together and pushing a lot of new things, which is not at all required. So rather than dragging for a longer time, as our friend earlier said in the introduction, we are not just adding just to drag your course period for 6 months or something. We want it to be focused. We want you to learn what exactly is required. And also I'll guide you how you can explore something else if you wanted to know. So all that we will be trying to put it here. So that way the learning will go on. Fine. So this is like what we require to know, why it is SAS is required, why not with something else, what is the capabilities, what would be the scope. As I said, this is the only software in the clinical domain. We do not have any other software. So that's the reason like SAS is highly preferred. Okay, where it's not allowed that is not approved by the FDA. So smaller organizations might start using some smaller softwares, but initially later they have to end up with a SAS. So we have obviously the higher scope of getting an opportunity. Okay. I hope it is all clear so far whatever we have discussed. If there are any questions, you can let me know one after that. You can please feel free to ask any questions, whatever you have. Before to that, is it clear what all I have discussed so far? Guys?